I think most people would agree that Doom 4 is a pretty kick-ass reboot or sequel or whatever you want to call it. It's a violent, challenging and enjoyable game that doesn't hold back, and manages to carry across a lot of the elements that made those old school shooters so much fun. It's a shame then that they kind of lost their way with the multiplayer mode. Now, the single player campaign was developed by id Software, as it damn well should be, and they pretty much nailed it in every way possible. The multiplayer mode was still developed partially by id Software, but also by a group called Certain Affinity. These guys have a history of making multiplayer modes, having worked on the Halo series and even Call of Duty, and that's going to become pretty obvious the more you play the multiplayer, as the influences are palpable to say the least. To put it simply, it just doesn't feel like Doom, and everything negative you've heard leading up to the game's release is probably true. Yes, the full content does give the game a bit more depth and make it more enjoyable, but it's still a half-assed afterthought that shows little regard and understanding for what Doom multiplayer should really be like. And I think it's a damn shame that people will ultimately mark down the whole game because of how piss poor the multiplayer mode is, which sucks because the single player mode ticks all of the boxes. I mean, if I was a married man, I'd meet the single player mode at a seedy motel off the highway for a one night stand. Yes, I love it that much. But let's not get into that sunny gyms and instead talk about why I think the multiplayer mode falls so flat on its ass, shall we? Probably the biggest red flag for me was when I couldn't even get into a match for a game mode that wasn't Team Deathmatch, which is a bit disappointing considering the game hasn't even been out for a week. There are dedicated servers though, which is a plus, and great for people in shithole countries like mine, where our internet is so slow that literally people in third world countries are downloading their pirated movies and TV shows faster than we are. Matchmaking is all over the place. I've had countless matches where the opposing team is made up of prestige ranked players, literally the entire team, whilst my team is full of people who are low level. A lot of the basic features in the game are rehashed mechanics we've seen before, so when you first hop into the multiplayer mode, you'll probably want to customize your appearance, which can be done right down to the individual pieces of armor on each body part. There's something called hack modules, which remind me a bit of the burn cards in Titanfall. Now, you earn these at the end of each match, and they're activated if you go a life without being able to score a kill. It might include faster movement speed or highlighting the person that killed you through walls, you know, that kind of thing.
Magnet activated.
In terms of how the game controls, the movement speed isn't blindingly fast, but it is brisk at the very least. Double jumping gives you a bit more mobility, but it still does feel like you're being held back. It's like when you try to run through water that's up to your knees. The ledge grab makes navigation a lot faster, and you can generally get around quite quickly. I just wish the base movement speed was ramped up a bit more. But I think the number one factor as to why the multiplayer doesn't feel like a Doom game is the fact that the game uses weapon loadouts as opposed to actually placing weapons in the levels. Now, I get why they've done this. It's because people are so hooked on ranked multiplayer games these days, and they need to appease that demographic that need the reward of constantly unlocking new items and guns every time they reach a certain level. The weapons in the multiplayer mode can all be unlocked by the time you're level 17, and there's a decent enough amount of them, some of which don't even show up in the single player at all. But the weapon placements in levels has been a staple of the series and proper old school shooters since its inception. I mean, even Doom 3 managed to get this right in its multiplayer mode. Giving each player their own loadout does personalize the experience, but it just makes it feel like any other cookie cutter ranked multiplayer mode that's been reskinned to kind of look like a Doom game. If you find a weapon loadout that works well for you, then there's not really any reason to change it unless you just get bored with using the same guns every single map. What it also means is that every single map kind of plays out in the same manner, and a lot of players are going to be using the same tactics regardless of the layout of the map itself. At the moment, it seems every man and his goddamn dog uses the chain gun and super shotgun, and for good reason. It's effective. You'll most likely just play with other guns out of experimentation before settling into what works best for you and then just sticking with it. When you play a proper classic deathmatch map which has weapons put in certain locations, it adds an element of strategy and urgency to the game. People are going to invariably flock to those coveted locations to wait for the best weapons to spawn in, and it adds a sort of central point where combat usually takes place. It's no surprise that in a game like Quake 3, during certain maps you'll always find players fighting in key areas because those are the spots in the map that hold the best items and weapons. Or you might hear the sound of someone's footsteps nearby or hear them picking up armor or a weapon and have a rough idea of where they were. In Doom 4 you just kind of run around the map willy-nilly, and the victor is often the person who starts firing first. Ammunition is universal, so whatever weapon you're using, you just grab a generic ammo box and be done with it, and health is so abundant that you never really need to retreat for more than 2 or 3 seconds before you're able to heal yourself. Now, I know they have respawn spots for certain weapons like the chainsaw and Gauss gun, but they're not contested all that much, and I guess my point is that they really should have done it with every single weapon. That kind of mechanic is truly the heart and soul of old school deathmatch, and they've really shit the bed by not including it. Look, it's not bad, it functions well enough, the controls are responsive, and everything feels familiar in terms of the base mechanics, but that's exactly my point. Aside from its visuals and art style, there's very little of the core gameplay that makes it all that unique. Another thing I disliked about the multiplayer is the inclusion of these god-awful demonic possessions. The way this works is that a rune will spawn at random and someone can control a demon like a revenant or mancubus for a short period of time. Now this sucks for a couple of key reasons, mainly because it's just horribly unbalanced and whoever gets in control of these things will basically just score a bunch of free kills. And also because it seems to spawn much too frequently, it seems almost the entire time there's someone running around as a demon, wrecking all kinds of shit. What could have been a somewhat solid kill streak is often ruined because you're insta-killed before you realised you had a Hell Knight on your ass. There's no tutorial on how to control these things, and the first few times I managed to get a rune, I had no idea what the hell I was doing and was pretty quickly killed. Maybe that's just my fault though for being an idiot. As I said before, almost everything is unlocked by the time you're around level 17, and after that you're only earning new hack modules and more options to customize your armor, all of which are entirely cosmetic. The only reason I can see to keep playing after all of that is if you've got nothing better to do or you're just filling in time waiting for the next multiplayer shooter to come out. The only other thing I didn't talk about was the Snap Map mode, which is the game's included map maker, and to be honest, there's not all that much to say about it at the moment. Most of the content right now is pretty average, but in the future maybe there'll be more to talk about. This is what's probably going to keep most people coming back and playing the game, so fingers crossed that people really crack onto this and start churning out some unique and enjoyable maps. What we've ended up here with Doom 4 or Doom 2016 is a game that totally nails its single player campaign, offering up a solid and challenging experience. Sadly followed up with a tacked on multiplayer mode that just kinda does its own thing and feels horribly out of place. It's like when you go into a deli and you got a Reuben sandwich on one side and a bologna sandwich on the other. The choice is simple. Again, Doom multiplayer isn't bad in the sense of it being unplayable. I mean, in terms of the technical aspect, it works fine. It's well optimized and I don't think I encountered any serious errors or glitches the entire time I played. It's just that it really wasn't what some of us were hoping for with the Doom multiplayer mode. Go and see what Epic Games are doing with the new Unreal Tournament to see a proper old school multiplayer game rebooted. If you want to play true, proper Doom multiplayer, then go grab a source port like Xandronum and go play the original game online. There's deathmatch, co-op, survival, and countless other modes that people are actively playing right now, and it's been modded so much that it's like an entirely new game now anyway. Because what they've shipped with Doom 4, it isn't Doom multiplayer. I don't know what the hell it is. But hey, the single player is awesome, and that's all that matters with a Doom game.
1 kill remaining. Score limit reached. Narrow
Do it.
victory.
The goal killed first.